The first mistake the Veltarian Empire made was believing their own propaganda. Admiral HFY stood on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, watching Earth's blue marble spin lazily through the view screen. Behind him, the largest invasion fleet in galactic history stretched across the void. 1,200 warships, each one capable of glassing a continent. The Armada had swept through 17 star systems without meaningful resistance. Humanity would be number 18. Primitive, HFY muttered, his four eyes tracking the orbital debris surrounding the third planet. No energy shields, no quantum lattice defenses. Their largest vessels barely qualify as corvettes by our standards. His aide, Sub-Commander Yethel, consulted her tactical display. Intelligence confirms 37 billion inhabitants across 12 colonies. Admiral, the homeworld houses 8 billion. Our projections indicate complete pacification within 72 standard hours. HFY's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The Veltarian had conquered 43 species over the past millennium. Each followed the same pattern: initial orbital bombardment to cripple infrastructure, followed by ground forces to secure resources and establish labor camps. The humans would break like all the others. What they didn't know was that humanity had been watching 3 light years away. Captain Nix Castillo floated in the command sphere of Vengeful Tide, humanity's most advanced stealth frigate. Her augmented eyes processed data streams from quantum sensors scattered throughout the system, each one invisible to Veltarian detection grids. Their positioning for bombardment formation, reported Lieutenant Darius Volkov from the tactical station. 12 dreadnoughts taking high orbit, support vessels spreading wide. Classic intimidation pattern. Castillo's jaw tightened. She'd studied every piece of intel they had on Veltarian tactics, learned from the smoking ruins of colonies that had fallen before Earth's diplomats could even establish contact. The aliens were methodical, efficient, and absolutely merciless. Signal strength to the deep space arrays, she asked. Full connectivity with all 73 Sentinel stations. Confirmed. Communications Officer Rain Tanaka. Admiral Moreau is standing by. Castillo nodded. The Veltarian would expect humanity to surrender after the first demonstration of their firepower. They would expect broken communications, scattered resistance, and gradual submission. They would not expect the most comprehensive early warning network ever constructed, nor the industrial capacity humanity had hidden in asteroid fields and rogue planets throughout the outer system. Most of all, they would not expect what humanity had learned about war. On Earth's surface, Emergency Protocol 7 was already in motion, in underground command centers stretching from the Appalachians to the Himalayas. Military commanders coordinated the largest evacuation in human history. Not just the people of knowledge, every hard drive, every research database, every cultural artifact that defined humanity was being copied to hidden archives scattered across 100 worlds. Dr. Elena Vasquez sealed the last data core in the Geneva facility, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what was coming. Cultural preservation complete, she reported to the command network. All archives are synchronized. Above them, automated defense platforms powered up for the first time since their construction. The Veltarian would see them as laughably primitive chemical rockets and kinetic weapons against plasma cannons and antimatter warheads. What they wouldn't see was the trap humanity had been building for the past 2 years. Because while the Veltarian had been conquering systems through overwhelming force, humanity had been learning from their victims. Every species that fell had left digital ghosts in quantum networks, fragments of their final transmissions that told the same story. Advanced civilizations crippled by their reliance on technology, unable to adapt when their sophisticated systems were compromised. Humanity had chosen a different path. In shipyards hidden within Jupiter's radiation belt, Admiral Helena Moreau watched as the final stealth dreadnought emerged from its construction cradle. Iron Wraith was ugly by any aesthetic standard, a brutal amalgamation of salvaged alien tech and human engineering that prioritized function over form. Her weapons were crude but devastating, her armor thick enough to ram capital ships. Her crew trained for a kind of warfare the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. The Veltarian were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their capacity for absolute, uncompromising violence when their survival was at stake. The bombardment began at 14:27 Greenwich Mean Time. HFY watched with satisfaction as his lead dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, charged its primary plasma cannon. The weapon could crack tectonic plates. A single shot would turn one of humanity's major population centers into molten glass, providing the necessary demonstration of Veltarian power. Target locked on the settlement they call New York. Reported weapons officer Zenthuk, charging sequence at 90%. The Admiral's mandibles clicked approvingly. The humans would witness their largest city vaporized. Their primitive communication networks would carry images of destruction across their world. And within hours, their leaders would be transmitting surrender protocols. It was always the same. The plasma cannon fired. A column of superheated matter lanced earthward, carrying enough energy to boil an ocean. For 3 seconds, it carved through Earth's atmosphere like a sword of light. Then, impossibly, it simply stopped. What? HFY's eyes widened as the energy beam dissipated against some invisible barrier 20 kilometers above the city. Report. Tactical Officer Hervan's claws rattled against his console. Unknown interference. Admiral, the beam was absorbed somehow, scanning for defensive installations. What they found defied their understanding of human technology. Orbiting Earth were hundreds of small satellites, each one emitting a unique quantum signature. As the Veltarian watched, these satellites began linking together, forming an intricate energy web that wrapped around the planet like a protective shell. Captain Costello smiled grimly from her hidden position. Phase 1 is active. They just met our guests. The satellites weren't human technology, they were Kethmori, salvaged from the ruins of a civilization that had fallen to the Veltarian 6 months ago. Humanity had reverse-engineered the quantum shielding technology and deployed it in secret, powered by fusion reactors hidden on the moon's dark side. But the shield was just the beginning. Sir, Dries called out from his station. I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout their fleet. They're preparing for concentrated bombardment. Good, Costello replied. Rain, signal Admiral Moreau. Tell her it's time to introduce ourselves. HFY was no longer confident, but he was still determined. All vessels, prepare for coordinated bombardment. We'll saturate their defensive grid. 1,200 plasma cannons began charging simultaneously. The energy output would be enough to sterilize a continent, shield or no shield. The humans had managed one surprise, but the Veltarian Empire had not conquered half the galaxy by being deterred by defensive measures. Charging complete, Admiral. Fire. The space around Earth erupted in deadly light. 1,200 plasma beams converged on the protective grid, pouring enough energy into the quantum field. The power of star, for a moment, the shield held, absorbing and redistributing the massive energy discharge. Then it began to fail. The quantum ladders flickered, overloaded relay nodes exploding in cascades of sparks. One by one, the protective satellites went dark, leaving gaps in the defensive screen. The second wave of plasma beams punched through, striking Earth's surface with devastating force. The Australian continent vanished in nuclear fire. The Pacific Ocean boiled. Seismic shockwaves raced around the planet as tectonic plates shifted under the assault. Direct hits confirmed, reported Hervan. Massive surface damage. Detecting secondary explosions across multiple continents. HFY's confidence returned. Excellent. Prepare for the second wave. We'll leave enough infrastructure intact to be useful. But they need to understand the futility of resistance. He never saw the attack that destroyed his flagship Iron. Wraith emerged from stealth directly above the Dominion's edge, her black hull invisible against the void until she was close enough to fire. Admiral Moreau had positioned her dreadnought in the debris field of a destroyed satellite, using the wreckage as camouflage while the Veltarian focused on their bombardment. Full spread. All tubes, Moreau commanded. 40 nuclear torpedoes erupted from Iron Wraith's hull, each one guided by quantum-entangled navigation systems that made them impossible to jam. They struck the Dominion's edge before the alien vessel could even raise its shields. Nuclear fire blossoming across the dreadnought's hull. The flagship's armor held against the first impacts, but the warheads were just the delivery system. Each torpedo carried a payload of nanoscale disassemblers, tiny machines, designed to break down molecular bonds in alien hull materials. HFY felt his ship shudder as the nanobots began their work. Damage report. Hull integrity failing on all decks. Hervan's voice carried panic. Some kind of molecular weapon or armor is dissolving. The Admiral stared in shock as his mighty dreadnought began to come apart around him. Where the nanobots spread, the ship's hull simply ceased to exist, leaving gaping wounds open to space. All vessels, return fire. Concentrate on The bridge exploded as atmosphere vented into space, taking HFY and his command crew with it. But the Dominion's Edge was just the first to die. Hidden throughout the system, 37 stealth frigates like Vengeful Tide began their attacks. They struck from impossible angles, using debris fields and asteroid shadows for concealment, hitting hard and fast before vanishing back into the void. The Veltarian fleet, arranged for bombardment rather than defense, found themselves caught in a deadly crossfire. Their superior weapons meant nothing if they couldn't target their attackers. In the first 10 minutes of combat, humanity destroyed 8 dreadnoughts and 43 support vessels. The invasion had begun with confidence. Now it would continue. With blood, Sub-Commander Yethel assumed command of the shattered Veltarian fleet. From the bridge of endless conquest, her mandibles clicking in rapid distress signals as damage reports flooded her command console. In 20 minutes of combat, the humans had accomplished what no species had managed in a millennium of galactic warfare. They had drawn blood from the Veltarian Empire. Fleet status, she barked, her for eyes scanning tactical displays that showed far too many red markers. 17 capital ships destroyed, 43 support vessels lost, reported the surviving tactical officer. The humans are using some form of stealth technology we cannot penetrate. Our sensors detect them only seconds before attack. Yethel's claws scraped against her command throne. The humans had sacrificed their homeworld surface to buy time for this ambush, accepting billions of casualties without hesitation. Such ruthlessness was unprecedented. Reconfigure formation. All vessels maintain overlapping defensive screens. Deploy hunter-killer squadrons to sweep for stealth contacts. But even as she gave the orders, Yethel knew they were fighting. Blind, the human vessels appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, then vanished before return fire could be coordinated. Worse, their weapons were specifically designed to counter Veltarian defenses those molecular disassemble. Hers were eating through armor that had withstood the concentrated fire of entire enemy fleets. Captain Costello watched the alien formation shift from her position inside the asteroid belt. Vengeful Tide hung motionless in the shadow of a hollowed-out mining station, her quantum dampeners making her invisible to Veltarian sensors. They're adapting faster than projected, Darius observed. Defensive positioning, active sweeps. We might get one more attack run before they lock down our approach vectors. Then we make it count. Costello opened a channel to the hidden fleet. All units, this is Nix. Execute Prometheus protocol. Across the system, 36 stealth vessels began moving toward predetermined coordinates. Prometheus wasn't about tactical strikes, it was about psychological warfare. The plan was simple in concept, horrifying in execution. Each stealth frigate carried a single prototype weapon, a quantum resonance device that could destabilize the molecular bonds holding the starship together. The weapon required close proximity to work and would destroy the delivery vessel in the process. Humanity was about to demonstrate the difference between conquest and survival. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb piloted Shadow's Edge on her final mission, watching as the Veltarian battle line grew larger in his view screen. His ship carried one of the quantum resonance devices, and his crew of 37 volunteers knew they weren't coming home. Target locked, reported his weapons officer, Ensign Lucy Chen. Distance 1,200 kilometers and closing. Webb felt surprisingly calm. His wife and daughter had died in the Australian bombardment, vaporized along with Melbourne and 5 million other souls. The mathematics of revenge were simple. 37 lives for one enemy dreadnought was a bargain. He'd take every time. All stations, this is the captain. It has been an honor serving with you. Humanity remembers. Humanity endures. Came the ritual response from his crew. Webb triggered the quantum resonance device. The effect was invisible to the naked eye, but devastating in its scope. Reality itself seemed to hiccup around Shadow's Edge as the device overloaded, creating a cascade failure in the fundamental forces holding matter together. The human frigate simply ceased to exist, taking its crew with it in a flash of exotic energy. But the resonance wave continued outward, washing over the Veltarian dreadnought, conquering truth. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien vessel began to unravel. It started with the hull plating, which simply lost molecular cohesion and drifted apart like dust. Internal bulkheads followed, then structural supports, then the crew themselves as the wave of dissolution spread through the ship at the speed of light. 3,000 Veltarian died in absolute silence as their bodies forgot how to hold together. Yethel, watched in horror as one of her mightiest warships dissolved like salt in water. What kind of weapon? Unknown energy signature, her tactical officer stammered. It appears to destabilize molecular bonds at the quantum level. Sub-Commander, we're detecting similar energy buildups from multiple human vessels. Across the battle zone, 35 more stealth frigates began their final approaches. Each one carried a crew willing to die for the chance to take an enemy capital ship with them. Each one represented humanity's answer to conventional military doctrine. You cannot defeat an enemy willing to sacrifice everything. Webb's attack was the signal for general engagement. From hidden positions throughout the system, the main human battle fleet began to emerge. These weren't sleek vessels designed for exploration or commerce, they were ugly. Brutal weapons of war built in secret shipyards, their hulls bristling with salvaged alien technology and human innovations. Admiral Moreau commanded from Iron Wraith, but around her moved a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Torpedo cruisers launched clouds of nuclear warheads guided by artificial intelligence that learned from each missed shot. Missile destroyers fired kinetic penetrators accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. Assault carriers deployed, fighter craft piloted by humans who had watched their worlds burn and wanted nothing more than revenge. All vessels, weapons free, Moreau transmitted. Show them what we learned from their previous victims. The battle became a slaughter. Veltarian plasma weapons, designed to overwhelm shields and vaporize conventional armor, proved inadequate against human vessels that had no shields at all. Just layers upon layers of reactive armor that absorbed energy and converted it to thrust. Human nuclear weapons, primitive by galactic standards, carry payloads specifically engineered to disrupt Veltarian technology. Most importantly, human tactics had evolved beyond traditional fleet engagement. Every ship in the human fleet was expendable. Every crew member a volunteer willing to die if it meant taking enemies with them. When Iron Wraith's main guns were destroyed by plasma fire, Moreau rammed her dreadnought into the side of a Veltarian carrier, nuclear charges detonating along her hull. As she tore through the alien vessel like a spear dot, and for hours of combat, the humans reduced the Veltarian invasion fleet from 1,200 vessels to less than 300. But the cost was devastating. 90% of humanity's hidden fleet was gone. Along with their irreplaceable crews, Yethel stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans had just destroyed the largest military force in galactic history, and they had done it by treating their own lives as ammunition. Sub-Commander, her communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Put it through. The image that appeared on her screen was that of a human female, her uniform torn and bloodied, her face bearing the scars of recent combat. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of species-ending fury. "I am Admiral Helena Moreau of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You came to our worlds expecting easy conquest. You found war instead. This is your only warning. Withdraw now, or we will follow you back to your homeworld and show you what humanity learned from watching you murder our friends." The transmission ended. Yethel looked at her surviving fleet, then at the burning wreckage that had once been the pride of the Veltarian military. For the first time in her career, she gave an order that went against every principle of Imperial doctrine. "All vessels, prepare for hyperspace jump. We are withdrawing to regroup." But even as her ships began charging their faster-than-light drives, Yethel knew that withdrawal was impossible. The humans had demonstrated something that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. That a sufficiently motivated species could not be conquered, only destroyed, and destruction was a game that humans played better than anyone. The emergency session of the Veltarian High Command convened in the crystal spires of Velshara Prime, their homeworld's capital city that had never known the shadow of war. Grand Admiral Dekver presided over the assembly, his ancient carapace bearing the scars of a dozen successful campaigns, his four eyes fixed on a holographic display, showing the aftermath of humanity's defense. "Explain to me," his voice resonated through the chamber's crystalline acoustics, "how a species that barely achieved interstellar flight managed to destroy our most powerful invasion fleet." Sub-Commander Yethel stood before the assembled war council, her mandibles clicking nervously. "The humans employ tactics we have never encountered, Grand Admiral. They treat their own vessels as weapons, their crews as expendable resources. Their entire strategic doctrine is built around acceptable losses that no civilized species would consider. Barbarism," spat Fleet Admiral Korveth. "Primitive suicide tactics, affected barbarism, yet they'll correct it. They have studied our previous conquests, learned from the species we defeated. Every weapon they deployed was specifically designed to counter our defenses. They sacrificed their homeworld surface to buy time for preparation, accepted billions of casualties without hesitation. BlackHFY's claws scraped against his command throne in 8 centuries of military service. He had never encountered a species willing to pay such prices for mere survival. Intelligence assessment. The chamber's central display shifted to show detailed scans of human colonies, 37 inhabited worlds. Grand Admiral. Industrial capacity suggests they can replace their losses within 2 standard years. More concerning, long-range sensors detect massive construction projects in remote systems, far beyond what their population should be able to support. Automated manufacturing. Yethel added grimly, they have weaponized their artificial intelligence systems. While we were celebrating easy conquest, they were building a war machine. BlackHFY contemplated the data. The humans had revealed capabilities that threatened the Empire's fundamental assumptions about warfare. If their tactics spread to other species, if conquered worlds learned that the Veltarian could be defeated, military options. Fleet Admiral Corvette activated his personal display. Complete sterilization. We deploy the Deep Strike Fleet 800 vessels equipped with antimatter weapons. Systematic elimination of every human world simultaneously. No warnings, no negotiation, no survivors. The War Council fell silent. Deep strike protocols had been used only twice in Imperial history, both times against species that possessed weapons capable of threatening Veltarian homeworlds. The complete erasure of a spacefaring civilization was not undertaken lightly. Casualties? BlackHFY asked. Acceptable. Perhaps 50 vessels lost to human defensive measures. The key is simultaneous strikes. They cannot defend 37 worlds at once. But even as Corvette outlined the extermination plan, humanity was already moving. Captain Castello had survived the battle for Earth aboard a salvaged Veltarian corvette, her original ship lost in the final assault. Now she commanded a mixed fleet of human survivors and alien vessels, their hulls painted with crude human markings, their crews burning with the cold fury of species survival. Signal from the Kepler station reported her new communications officer, a grizzled veteran named Rex Kaminsky, who had learned Veltarian technology by dissecting there. Ned, Admiral Chen has confirmed the construction timeline. Castello nodded grimly. While the Veltarian debated strategy, humanity had been building something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just ships, but an entire military philosophy designed around a single principle. If you threaten human extinction, humanity will take the galaxy down with them. How long until the Reaper fleet is operational? 6 weeks for the first squadron, full deployment in 4 months. 4 months to build weapons that could end civilizations. The Veltarian, accustomed to decades-long strategic planning, wouldn't expect such rapid industrial mobilization. They couldn't conceive of a species that would convert its entire economy to weapons production within a matter of months, but they were about to learn. Dr. Elena Vasquez had survived the bombardment of Earth in the Geneva bunkers, and now she stood in the engineering bay of humanity's most ambitious project. The World Ender was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was a weapon platform, the size of a small moon, built from asteroids and powered by stellar engineering techniques salvaged from a dozen conquered species. Quantum Cascade Initiator is online, she reported to the construction team. We can trigger stellar collapse in any star within 50 light years. The weapon was insane by any rational standard of device that could turn stars into supernovas, sterilizing entire solar systems. But rationality had died with Earth's continents. What remained was mathematics. If the Veltarian wanted to play extinction games, humanity would ensure mutual destruction. Dr. Vasquez called Engineer Torres from the weapon control station. We're receiving priority transmission from Admiral Chen. The Admiral's image appeared on the main screen, her face bearing the weight of ultimate command. Elena, we've detected massive Veltarian fleet movements. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for total sterilization of human space. How soon can your project be operational? 3 weeks for basic functionality. But Admiral, if we use this weapon, we cannot limit the casualties. A quantum cascade will destroy everything within 20 light years. Their worlds, their colonies, millions of innocent civilians. Chen's expression never changed. The Veltarian forfeited their right to civilian protection when they chose genocide as their opening move. If they want to end the human species, they'll discover that we're willing to take their empire with us. The transmission ended, leaving Vasquez alone with the magnitude of what they were building. Humanity was preparing to commit genocide on a galactic scale, and the terrifying truth was that every human who heard the plan supported it. Without hesitation, 3 weeks later, the Veltaran Deep Strike Fleet emerged from hyperspace around Kepler 442, expecting to find a human colony ripe for destruction. Instead, they found empty space and a single message broadcast on all frequencies. Admiral Chen's voice carried across the void with the authority of species judgment. "You have come to murder our children. We have prepared an appropriate response. Every star system within 50 light years of your homeworld is now targeted by quantum cascade weapons. Attack any human world, and we will trigger stellar collapse across your entire empire. Your civilians, your worlds, your history, all of it will burn in nuclear fire." Fleet Admiral Corvette stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Impossible. No species possesses stellar engineering technology, sir." His tactical officer's voice cracked with fear. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational anomalies in the Velshara system. Something is destabilizing our primary star." The realization hit Corvette like a physical blow. The humans weren't bluffing. They had built weapons capable of murdering stars, and they had positioned them for maximum psychological impact at the heart of the Veltaran Empire. "Sir, incoming transmission from Velshara Prime. It's Grand Admiral BlackHFY." The ancient commander appeared on screen, his carapace dulled with fear. "Fleet Admiral, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. The humans have demonstrated the ability to trigger stellar collapse. Our homeworld star is showing signs of instability." Corvette felt his certainty crumble. "Grand Admiral, if we withdraw now, we admit that a primitive species can dictate terms to the Empire. If we continue, they will murder our star and end our civilization. Withdraw. That is a direct order." For the first time in Imperial history, a Veltaran fleet retreated without firing a shot, while humanity was just beginning to show the galaxy what they had learned about war. Grand Admiral BlackHFY stood in the Imperial War Room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the collapse of Veltaran authority across 17 sectors. The humans had done more than defeat an invasion fleet. They had shattered the myth of Imperial invincibility. "Status report," he commanded, his ancient voice carrying barely controlled rage. "Rebellion on 43 worlds. Grand Admiral. Reported intelligence Commander Sithel. The hegemony of Talvik has declared independence. The Korthic Confederacy is mobilizing their defense fleets. Worst of all, the surviving Kethmori have allied with the humans." BlackHFY's mandibles clicked in fury. The Kethmori had been one of the Empire's most advanced conquests. Their quantum shielding technology now turned against its former masters. If other conquered species joined the rebellion, military options, the humans have fortified 17 systems with their stellar collapse weapons. Fleet Admiral Corvette reported grimly. "Any direct assault risks massive casualties. However, our analysts have identified a weakness in their strategy." The central display shifted to show human fleet movements over the past month. "They're spread thin, Grand Admiral, protecting 37 worlds while supporting rebel movements across the galaxy. If we can force them into a single decisive engagement, go on. The TRAPPIST system, 7 human colonies, over 4 billion inhabitants. If we threaten simultaneous bombardment of all 7 worlds, they'll have to commit their entire fleet to defend them. We can finally engage them in conventional warfare, where our superior numbers can decide the outcome." BlackHFY studied the tactical projection. It was a massive gamble, committing every available vessel to a single battle, but the alternative was watching the Empire crumble as humanity's rebellion spread. "Assemble the Grand Fleet. Every ship, every crew, every weapon in Imperial space. We end this here." Captain Castello received the intelligence briefing aboard the rebuilt Vengeful Tide, her face grim as she absorbed the scope of Veltaran mobilization. 3,000 vessels converging on the TRAPPIST system, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "They're betting everything on one battle," observed Lieutenant Darius, his cybernetic armor replacement lost in the Earth engagement interfacing directly with the tactical systems. Classic Imperial doctrine. Overwhelming force to shatter enemy morale. "How much time before they reach TRAPPIST?" 72 hours. Captain, Admiral Chen is recalling every human vessel from across the galaxy. We'll have maybe 800 ships to meet their 3,000. Castello nodded grimly. The mathematics were brutal, but humanity had learned to make mathematics work in their favor. Signal Admiral Chen. Tell her I volunteer Vengeful Tide for Operation Pyrrhus. Darius turned to stare at her. Captain, Pyrrhus is a suicide mission. All our missions are suicide missions, Lieutenant. The question is how many of them we take. With us, Admiral Helena Chen stood on the bridge of her new flagship, Humanity's Wrath, watching as the assembled human fleet took formation. 800 vessels, every ship humanity could muster, crewed by volunteers who understood they were fighting for species survival. Final casualty projections, she asked her strategic officer. 95% losses, Admiral. We simply don't have the firepower to match their numbers in conventional engagement. But if we can implement Operation Pyrrhus, Chen nodded. Pyrrhus was humanity's ultimate tactical doctrine when facing extinction. Make the cost of victory so high that defeat and victory become indistinguishable, all vessels. This is Admiral Chen. In 6 hours, we will engage the largest military force in galactic history. They come expecting to break us through superior numbers. They will learn that humanity's greatest weapon is not our technology. It is our refusal to accept defeat. Today, we write the terms of galactic peace in fire and blood. The battle began when the Veltarian Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Their vessels arranged in classical attack patterns designed to maximize firepower concentration. 3,000 ships stretched across space like a metal constellation, their combined mass larger than many moons. Grand Admiral BlackHFY watched from the bridge of Imperial Destiny, his flagship positioned at the fleet's center. Human fleet detected 800 vessels, maintaining defensive formation around the inner colonies. Numerical superiority is 4-1 in our favor, reported Fleet Admiral Corveth. Shall we demand surrender before opening fire? No. Today we demonstrate that challenging the Empire carries a price no species can afford to pay. All vessels commence bombardment. 3,000 plasma cannons fired simultaneously, turning space into a hellscape of superheated energy. The barrage struck human defensive positions with devastating force, vaporizing entire squadrons in seconds. The outer defensive line simply ceased to exist, taking 200 human vessels with it. But Admiral Chen had expected massive casualties. Phase 2, all units, execute Pyrrhus. Across the human fleet, ships began to change. External armor, plating jettisoned, revealing weapons systems that defied conventional military logic. Instead of guns or missile tubes, the human vessels deployed thousands of small pods, each one containing a single volunteer pilot, and enough antimatter to vaporize a city. What are those? Corveth stared at his tactical display as clouds of tiny craft swarmed toward the Imperial fleet. A known design, his tactical officer reported. Too small for effective weapons systems. Some form of reconnaissance drone? They learned the truth when the first wave struck. Commander Sarah Okafor piloted Pod Alpha 7 toward the Veltarian dread, not endless victory, her small craft weaving through defensive fire with the agility only a human-controlled vessel could achieve. Around her, 900 other volunteers made their final approaches, each one carrying enough destructive force to cripple a capital ship. This is Alpha 7. She transmitted on the final approach frequency. Humanity remembers. Humanity endures. She triggered her antimatter charge at point-blank range. The explosion vaporized both her pod and a 300-meter section of alien hull, decompressing 12 decks and killing over 1,000 Veltarian crew. Across the battle zone, 900 similar detonations lit space like miniature stars. In the first 5 minutes of pod deployment, humanity destroyed 4 to 7 capital ships and damaged over 100 more, but the cost was absolute. 900 volunteers died to achieve those kills. Impossible. BlackHFY stared as his fleet reeled under the assault. They're using their crew as living weapons. Grand Admiral, his tactical officer's voice cracked with stress. We're detecting energy buildups in the human fleet's primary vessels. They're preparing for something. What they were preparing for was humanity's final answer to conventional warfare. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's wrath as her ship's quantum resonance weapon charged for activation. Around her, the surviving human fleet prepared for their last attack, not to defeat the enemy, but to ensure that victory became meaningless. All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Today we demonstrate the price of threatening human extinction. Activate all quantum resonance devices. Full spread, maximum yield. 50 human capital ships triggered their weapons simultaneously, creating cascading failures in the fundamental forces that held matter together. The effect spread outward at light speed, washing over both fleets with equal devastation. Veltarian vessels began to dissolve, their molecular bonds failing as reality itself became unstable. But the human ships suffered the same fate, 50 crews sacrificing themselves to take 300 enemy vessels with them. In 30 minutes of combat, humanity had reduced the Imperial Grand Fleet from 3,000 vessels to 1,500, but only 300 human ships remained, and most of those were damaged beyond repair. BlackHFY found himself commanding a fleet that had lost half its strength to an enemy that shouldn't have been able to challenge a single dreadnought. Status report: 1,500 vessels operational, Grand Admiral, but our ammunition stores are depleted. Many ships have critical damage and crew morale is. His aide hesitated, problematic. For the first time in Imperial history, Veltarian crews were questioning orders. They had watched impossible weapons dissolve their ships, seen comrades die to enemies who treated death as a tactical option. The psychological impact was devastating. Sir, communications reported urgently. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Chen appeared on screen, her uniform torn, her face bloodied, but her voice carrying absolute conviction. Grand Admiral BlackHFY, you came here to demonstrate Imperial power. Instead, you have learned what humanity is capable of when our survival is threatened. This is your final warning. Withdraw now, or we will activate the stellar collapse weapons. Positioned throughout your empire, your choice is simple: retreat with half your fleet, or watch your civilization burn with ours. The transmission ended, leaving BlackHFY to contemplate the mathematics of mutual destruction. He had come to crush a rebellion and instead found himself facing species-level extinction. For the first time in 8 centuries of military service, he gave the order to retreat. But as his damaged fleet began to withdraw, BlackHFY knew that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had proven that any species willing to pay the ultimate price could challenge even the mightiest empire. And across the stars, other conquered civilizations were learning the same lesson. The Veltarian retreat from Trappist marked the beginning of what historians would later call the Galactic Liberation War. Within weeks of the battle, 17 conquered species declared independence from the Empire, their rebellion fleets, equipped with human-designed weapons and tactical doctrines that turned Imperial advantages into catastrophic weaknesses. Grand Admiral BlackHFY stood in the ruins of his war room on Velshara Prime, watching holographic displays show the systematic collapse of Imperial authority. Red markers indicated rebellions, yellow showed contested systems, and the few remaining green indicators of Imperial control seemed to shrink with each passing hour. Casualty reports, he demanded, his ancient carapace bearing new stress fractures. From the weight of command, total Imperial losses exceed 40% of our military capacity, reported his aide, Intelligence Commander Sithel. More critically, we've lost orbital control over 63 systems. The humans have provided rebel forces with their molecular disassembler technology. BlackHFY's mandibles clicked in frustrated rage. The humans had done more than defeat Imperial fleets. They had weaponized the galaxy's oppressed populations. Every species the Empire had conquered was now learning humanity's most important military innovation: the willingness to accept mutual destruction rather than submit to tyranny. What about the stellar collapse weapons? Still active. Long-range sensors detect gravitational anomalies around our primary star and 6 other systems. The humans maintain the ability to trigger supernovas across the Imperial core. The Grand Admiral contemplated the tactical situation. The Empire faced a choice between gradual collapse through rebellion or immediate extinction through stellar engineering. Neither option was acceptable. Some in the High Council, it's time to consider alternative solutions. But even as the Veltarian leadership gathered for emergency sessions, humanity was preparing for the war's final phase. Captain Castello commanded the Liberation Fleet from her new flagship, Defiant Dawn, a hybrid vessel built from human engineering and salvaged alien technology. Around her, 300 vessels represented the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Not just human ships, but vessels crewed by former Imperial subjects who had learned that freedom was worth dying for. Signal from the Kethmori squadron, reported her communications officer. Admiral Vexthar confirms her people are ready for the final assault. Castello nodded. The Kethmori had been among the Empire's most advanced conquests, their quantum shielding technology now protecting rebel fleets across the galaxy. Their alliance with humanity had transformed the rebellion from desperate resistance to coordinated revolution. What about the hegemony forces? Talvik battle groups are in position. The Korthic Confederacy reports ready. Admiral Chen confirms that all human vessels are prepared for Operation Liberation. Operation Liberation was humanity's ultimate strategic, Gamma direct assault on Velshara Prime itself, the Empire's homeworld, and the symbolic heart of their galactic dominion. If they could break Imperial power at its source, the rebellion would become irreversible. Signal the fleet. Castello commanded. Today we finish what they started when they came to our worlds expecting easy conquest. The assault began with the largest hyperspace jump in galactic history. 300 vessels from 17 different species emerged simultaneously in the Velshara system, their combined fleet representing everything the rebellion had built. Over months of desperate warfare, they found the Imperial home fleet waiting for them. Grand Admiral BlackHFY had concentrated the last 2,000 vessels of the Imperial Navy around their homeworld, arranging them in defensive formations that had protected Velshara Prime for 8 centuries. Massive orbital fortresses bristled with weapons that could vaporize battle fleets, while planetary defense shields generated barriers that had never been breached. Human fleet detected, reported his tactical officer, 300 vessels. Mixed composition, they're maintaining standard approach vector. BlackHFY studied the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The rebels had committed everything to this single assault, gambling their entire military capacity against the Empire's strongest defenses. It was a mistake. That would end the rebellion permanently. All stations prepare for final engagement. Today we restore Imperial authority. But humanity had not survived this long by making conventional tactical choices. Admiral Chen commanded the human contingent from humanity's wrath, her flagship bearing the scars of a dozen desperate battles. Around her, the remnants of humanity's military might prepared for their species' greatest gamble. Dr. Vasquez. Status on the Stellar Engineering Project? The scientist's image appeared on her command screen, transmitted from the massive weapon platform hidden in the system's outer asteroid belt. Quantum cascade initiators are fully charged. Admiral, we can trigger stellar collapse within minutes of your command. Chen nodded grimly. The Liberation fleet carried enough firepower to damage the Imperial defenses, but not enough to break them entirely. Victory would require humanity's ultimate weapon, a willingness to destroy everything, rather than accept defeat. All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. We came here to end Imperial tyranny, but we're prepared to end Imperial civilization if necessary. Engage when ready. The battle erupted across multiple dimensions of space and time. Imperial plasma cannons fired at maximum range, their energy beams designed to vaporize entire squadrons before the rebels could close to effective range. But the Liberation fleet didn't try to avoid the bombardment. They flew directly into it, accepting devastating casualties for the chance to reach weapons range. Kethmori quantum shields absorbed and redirected Imperial fire. Talvik assault. Cruisers launched clouds of self-guided missiles that adapted their attack patterns in real time. Human vessels deployed their signature weapon crews willing to die if it meant taking enemies with them, but the Imperial defenses were too strong, their numbers too overwhelming. For every Imperial ship destroyed, the rebels lost 3 of their own within an hour of engagement. The Liberation fleet had been reduced to less than 200 vessels. BlackHFY watched the battle with growing confidence. They're breaking. Continue bombardment patterns. We'll crush their remaining forces within the hour. But even as he spoke, his sensor officers detected something that made their blood freeze with terror. Grand Admiral, his tactical officer's voice carried barely controlled panic. Massive energy buildup detected in the outer system. It's one of their stellar engineering platforms. Dr. Vasquez stood at the weapon control station of World Ender, her finger hovering over the activation switch that would turn Velshara star into a supernova. Around her, the engineering crew waited for her final command. Admiral Chen. She transmitted, Imperial forces are too strong. We cannot achieve conventional victory. Recommend immediate activation of Stellar Collapse Protocol. Chen's voice carried the weight of species judgment. Elena, if we trigger that weapon, we murder 6 billion Veltaran civilians, their children, their families, everyone who had nothing to do with Imperial military policy, and if we don't, they'll murder every human who remains alive. Admiral, this is what we built the weapon for. On her command screen, Chen could see the Liberation fleet dying under Imperial fire. Human vessels exploded in nuclear flame. their crews sacrificing everything for the chance to damage enemy positions. The rebellion was failing, and with it humanity's last hope for survival. But in that moment of ultimate choice, she made a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. Dr. Vasquez, activate the Quantum Cascade Initiator, but target the stellar engineering platform itself, not the star. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. Instead of triggering stellar collapse, Vasquez redirected the weapon's massive energy output into a focused quantum resonance beam, aimed directly at the Imperial fleet. The effect was visible across the entire system, a column of exotic energy that made space itself unstable. The beam struck the center of the Imperial formation with the force of a collapsing star. Reality hiccuped as fundamental forces destabilized, and 50 Imperial vessels simply ceased to exist, their molecular bonds failing under quantum pressure. But the weapon's true purpose wasn't destruction, it was demonstration. Grand Admiral BlackHFY, Admiral Chen transmitted across all frequencies. You have just witnessed a fraction of what we can do to your star. We could have triggered stellar collapse and murdered your entire civilization. Instead, we chose to show mercy. The question now is whether you will do the same. For the first time in Imperial history, a Veltaran fleet commander faced an enemy that possessed the power to end his civilization, but chose restraint instead. The psychological impact was devastating. BlackHFY stared at the tactical display, watching the quantum resonance effects dissipate, while his surviving fleet maintained defensive positions around their homeworld. The humans had demonstrated ultimate power and chosen not to use it, a concept that challenged everything the Empire believed about warfare. Sir, his communications officer reported quietly, we're receiving surrender requests from multiple Imperial squadrons. They're asking for terms. The Grand Admiral felt 8 centuries of military tradition crumble around him. His crews were no longer willing to fight an enemy that possessed weapons of stellar destruction, but chose mercy over murder. Opened a channel to the human fleet, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of civilizational change. Admiral Chen appeared on his screen, her face bearing the scars of desperate warfare, but her eyes showing something unexpected: hope. Grand Admiral, she said simply, are you ready to discuss terms? The Velshara Accords were signed aboard the neutral vessel New Harmony, a converted cargo ship that had become the de facto diplomatic center for the most important negotiations in galactic history. Representatives from 4 to 7 species gathered in the ship's main cargo bay, now hastily converted into a conference hall that would witness the birth of a new galactic order. Admiral Helena Chen sat across from Grand Admiral BlackHFY, the weight of 2 civilizations' futures pressing down on the simple metal table between them. Around them, the various species that had fought in the Liberation War waited to learn whether their victory would bring peace or merely a different kind of warfare. The terms are non-negotiable, Chen stated, her voice carrying the authority of a species that had proven its willingness to commit mutual annihilation rather than accept tyranny. Complete independence for all worlds that choose self-governance, reparations for damages caused by imperial conquest, and immediate cessation of all military actions against civilian populations. BlackHFY's mandibles clicked in what might have been resignation or relief. The former Empire accepts these terms, but Admiral, you must understand that we cannot simply dismantle 8 centuries of galactic governance overnight. There are logistics, economic systems, trade networks, which is why we're not demanding immediate withdrawal, Chen replied. Transition period of 5 standard years for full Imperial evacuation. During that time, joint peacekeeping forces will maintain stability while new governments establish themselves. But Grand Admiral, any attempt to re-establish Imperial authority will result in immediate stellar bombardment of Veltaran space. The threat hung in the air like a nuclear sword, backed by the quantum cascade weapons that remained positioned throughout the former Empire. Humanity had demonstrated both the power to destroy civilizations and the wisdom to choose restraint. But everyone in the room understood that restraint was conditional on compliance. Captain Castello observed the negotiations from her position, near the chamber's rear, watching as history rewrote itself in real time. She had survived Earth's bombardment, commanded fleets in impossible battles, and helped forge an alliance that had toppled the galaxy's greatest empire. Now she witnessed something equally remarkable: former enemies choosing cooperation over continued warfare. The Keth Mori Collective supports the proposed terms, announced Admiral Vexthara, her quantum-adapted voice carrying harmonics that spoke of ancient wisdom. But we insist on technology sharing provisions. The weapons that won this war must never again be used for conquest. Agreed, Chen nodded. All stellar engineering technology will be placed under joint oversight. No single species will possess the ability to trigger stellar collapse without consensus from the Galactic Liberation Council. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the proceedings via quantum encrypted transmission. From her position aboard World Ender, the massive weapon platform that had made this victory possible, around her, engineering crews began the delicate process of dismantling the stellar collapse weapons, not destroying them, but converting them to civilian applications. The technology that could murder stars would instead be used to stabilize dying systems and extend the life of planets threatened by cosmic disasters. It's remarkable, she murmured to her assistant. Engineer Torres, we built weapons to end civilizations, and now we're using them to save worlds. Torres nodded, watching as the quantum cascade initiators were reconfigured for stellar maintenance protocols. Humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons, Doctor. It was our ability to choose what we do with them. The formal signing ceremony took place under the light of Velshara's sun, the same star that humanity had threatened to collapse but chose to preserve. Representatives from 47 species added their marks to the accords, creating a document that would reshape galactic civilization. But the most significant moment came when Grand Admiral BlackHFY approached Admiral Chen privately. After the ceremony, his ancient frame bearing the weight of historical transition. Admiral, he said quietly, I must ask why. You possess the power to destroy us utterly. Your species had every justification for revenge after what we did to your worlds. Why show mercy? Chen considered the question, looking out at the stars that no longer represented a battlefield, but possibilities for peaceful exploration. Because, Grand Admiral, we learned something important during this war. The galaxy is big enough for everyone, but only if we choose to make it so. The Empire fell because it believed in conquest over cooperation. We won because we were willing to die for freedom, but more importantly, we were willing to live for it. 3 months after the signing of the Velshara Accords, Captain Castillo commanded the first Joint Patrol Fleet, her vessel accompanied by former Imperial ships. Now serving under the Galactic Liberation Council, the fleet's mission was simple, but revolutionary, ensuring that no species could again impose tyranny on unwilling populations. Signal from the Kepler system, reported her communications officer. Now a multi-species crew that included humans, Kethmori, and even reformed Veltaran. The human colonists report successful harvest completion. They're requesting transport capacity for trade goods. Castillo smiled, remembering when those same colonies had been threatened with extinction. Now they were contributing to a galactic economy based on voluntary exchange, rather than imperial tribute. Approved the request, and signal Admiral Chen. The former imperial sectors are reporting minimal unrest. The transition is proceeding ahead of schedule. On Earth, the continents scarred by Veltaran bombardment have become monuments to human resilience. Cities rose from the radioactive craters, their architecture incorporating alien technologies gifted by grateful allies. The planet that had nearly died in nuclear fire now served as the diplomatic center for a galaxy learning to live in peace. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. The Liberation War had proven that no empire, regardless of its power, could stand against species willing to pay any price for freedom. The knowledge spread across the galaxy, like ripples on a cosmic pond, ensuring that future would-be conquerors would face not individual resistance, but coalitions of free peoples who had learned humanity's most important lesson. Freedom is worth dying for, but it's worth living for even more. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Humanity's Wrath, now converted to a diplomatic vessel, watching as construction crews completed the first Galactic Council station. The massive orbital platform would serve as neutral ground for resolving disputes between species. Its weapons systems designed for defense rather than conquest. Admiral called her aide, Commander Darius, his cybernetic arm interfacing with communication systems that connected 47 different worlds. The Council is ready for your final report. Chen activated the quantum communicator, her words transmitted instantly across thousands of light years to representatives of every free species in the galaxy. This is Admiral Helena Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force, reporting on the final phase of Imperial transition. I am pleased to announce that the last Veltaran occupation forces have been peacefully withdrawn from contested systems. The former empire has been successfully transformed into the Veltaran Federation, a voluntary association of worlds committed to the principles of self-determination. She paused, looking out at stars that no longer represented threats, but opportunities. The Liberation War is officially over. Today, we begin the harder task of building a galaxy worthy of the sacrifices made to free it. The Galactic Liberation Council hereby declares this era the beginning of the Free Stars Period Age, where no species will bow to tyrants, and every world will choose its own destiny. The transmission ended, carrying humanity's final message to the stars that a species willing to face extinction rather than accept tyranny had not just won a war, but had written new rules for galactic civilization. In the end, the invasion that began with the Veltaran Empire's confidence had ended, with humanity writing the terms of galactic peace in the light of preserved stars, rather than the fire of destroyed worlds. They had proven that the greatest victory was not the destruction of enemies, but the transformation of enemies into allies. The galaxy would remember the lesson for millennia to come. Never underestimate a species that treats survival not as a goal, but as a negotiating position, and in the vast spaces between the stars, 47 species lived free because humanity had chosen to show the universe that some principles were worth any sacrifice, and that the greatest strength was knowing when to stop fighting and start building something better. The war was over, the peace had begun, and humanity's greatest victory was that they had chosen mercy when they possessed the power to choose annihilation.